In March 1934, a farmer named Clayton Hughes is staring at a mountain of branches piled behind his barn. The winter storms have dropped more dead wood than he has seen in 20 years. His apple orchard alone has generated enough debris to fill 3 wagons. The brush piles are a fire hazard. They harbor pests. They make his farm look abandoned. Clayton cannot afford the solution that agricultural magazines are advertising. The new gasoline-powered wood chippers cost more than his entire annual income. The Great Depression has emptied his savings. The bank has already threatened foreclosure twice. Buying a machine is impossible. His grandfather would have laughed at the problem. Clayton remembers watching the old man process branches when he was a boy. No engine, no gasoline, no electricity. Just a wooden frame, a heavy blade, and a lever that a single person could operate. The device turned branches into chips that became mulch, animal bedding, and garden soil amendment. Clayton finds the old shredder buried in the back of the barn. The wood is weathered but solid. The blade is rusted but salvageable. The design is so simple that repairs take an afternoon. By evening, Clayton is processing branches faster than 2 men could haul them. By week's end, his brush piles have become 20 wagon loads of useful material. He writes to the county extension office asking why this tool is not promoted. The response explains that modern farmers use powered equipment. Hand tools are outdated. Progress means engines. The extension agent includes a brochure for a gasoline chipper that costs $400. Clayton throws the brochure in the fire and keeps using his grandfather's shredder. That shredder design is over 300 years old. Variations existed across Europe, Asia, and colonial America. Every farming culture developed some version of a human-powered branch processor. The designs required no fuel, no maintenance contracts, no replacement parts from distant factories. They worked until the wood rotted. Then farmers built new ones from materials on their own land. The power equipment industry has spent 90 years making sure you never learned these designs existed. Today, Americans spend $9 billion annually on outdoor power equipment. Chippers, shredders, mulchers, and grinders fill warehouses and showrooms. The cheapest models cost several $100s. Professional units cost thousands. Every machine requires fuel, oil, filters, spark plugs, and eventual replacement. A hand-powered shredder costs nothing if you build it from scrap wood and salvaged metal. It requires no fuel ever. It needs no maintenance beyond occasional blade sharpening. It operates silently without disturbing neighbors. It produces no emissions. It provides exercise instead of requiring it separately at a gym. The industry that sells $9 billion of equipment annually has never mentioned that free alternatives exist. This is the story of the shredder design that costs nothing and lasts forever, the tool your great-grandfather used without thinking, and the industry that made sure you would never build one. If this knowledge matters to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Let's begin. The engineering of hand-powered shredders exploits simple physics that humans understood for millennia. Leverage multiplies human strength into forces that exceed what muscles alone can generate. A lever arm 3 feet long attached to a blade creates mechanical advantage that turns modest effort into powerful cutting force. The same principle that allows a crowbar to move boulders allows a hand shredder to slice through branches that would resist any hand tool. The basic design consists of 4 elements. A heavy base provides stability and mounting surface. A hinged blade or cutting mechanism attaches to this base. A lever arm extends from the blade to multiply operator force. A feed chute or guide directs branches into the cutting zone. Variations on this basic pattern existed across every woodworking culture. German farmers used a design called a hack machine that processed branches up to 3 inches in diameter. Japanese craftsmen developed lever-operated cutters for bamboo processing that worked equally well on hardwood branches. English estates employed tools called faggot choppers that converted brush into uniform fuel and mulch. The output quality matched or exceeded modern powered equipment. Hand-operated shredders produced chips of consistent size because the operator controls feed rate. Powered chippers often produce irregular output because branches feed at varying speeds. The hand tool operator adjusts naturally to material density, moisture content, and branch diameter. Processing speed depends on operator stamina rather than engine horsepower. A fit adult can process approximately 1 cubic yard of branches per hour with a well-designed hand shredder. This rate matches the lower end of powered chipper performance. For homestead-scale brush processing, hand tools accomplish the task without any of the costs, noise, or complexity of engines. The physics have not changed since Clayton Hughes rebuilt his grandfather's shredder. Human-powered leverage still multiplies force. Simple blades still cut wood. Gravity still pulls chips downward into collection areas. The engineering that worked for 3 centuries still works today, only the marketing has changed. The suppression of hand tool knowledge followed the pattern of other agricultural erasures. The power equipment industry emerged after World War II, with manufacturing capacity built for military production. Factories that had produced engines for jeeps and generators needed peacetime markets. Returning soldiers brought mechanical skills and comfort with engines. Suburban expansion created millions of new yards requiring maintenance. The conditions were perfect for selling powered equipment to a population that had never needed it before. Marketing created the need before selling the solution. Advertisements portrayed hand tools as primitive drudgery. Powered equipment represented progress, modernity, and the American standard of living. A man with a gas-powered chipper was successful. A man processing branches by hand was backwards and probably poor. The messaging worked because it aligned with genuine post-war optimism. Americans believed that technology solved problems. They trusted corporations to provide beneficial products. They assumed that new methods were inherently superior to old methods. The generation that remembered hand tools died without passing their knowledge to children who had been taught to despise manual labor. Extension services amplified the corporate message. Agricultural colleges received funding from equipment manufacturers. Extension agents trained on industry-provided materials. Demonstration days featured powered equipment exclusively. The institutional infrastructure that connected farmers to knowledge became a pipeline for corporate sales messages. By 1970, hand-powered shredders had disappeared from American awareness. Hardware stores stopped stocking components. Farm supply catalogs stopped listing plans. The knowledge that every farmer possessed in 1930 became exotic historical curiosity by 1970. The erasure was complete within a single generation. The $9 billion industry that emerged depends on this erasure continuing. Every homeowner who learns to build a hand shredder is a customer permanently lost. Every YouTube video demonstrating the technique threatens sales of entry-level chippers. Every community workshop teaching traditional toolmaking undermines the assumption that engines are necessary. The industry cannot compete with free, so they ensure that free remains invisible. Clayton Hughes was not unique in maintaining traditional knowledge through the Depression. Economic collapse forced millions of Americans to rediscover skills their grandparents had considered routine. Families who could not afford commercial products learned to make their own. Communities that lost access to manufactured goods revived craft traditions. The Depression became an unintentional preservation event for knowledge that prosperity would have erased. Hand shredder designs survived in Appalachian communities where poverty persisted beyond the Depression. Families too poor for powered equipment never stopped using hand tools. They maintained the skills, modified the designs, and passed knowledge to children who eventually carried it to other regions. The survival of traditional techniques often depended on communities that mainstream America pitied or ignored. Immigrant communities preserved parallel traditions from their home countries. German-American farmers in Pennsylvania maintained hack machine designs their grandfathers had brought from Europe. Japanese-American families in California used bamboo processing techniques adaptable to orchard waste. Each ethnic enclave became an unintentional seed bank for knowledge the broader culture was discarding. The Back to the Land movement of the 1970s briefly revived interest in hand tools. Publications like Mother Earth News and Countryside Magazine featured hand shredder designs. Readers built tools and shared modifications. For a decade, traditional techniques experienced minor renaissance among countercultural homesteaders. Then the movement faded and the knowledge retreated again. The mainstream never adopted what the counterculture discovered. Hardware stores never restocked traditional tool components. The brief revival became another historical footnote rather than lasting cultural change. The knowledge survived in scattered locations, waiting for conditions that would make it relevant again. The construction of a basic hand shredder requires minimal materials and moderate woodworking skill. The base must provide stable foundation for cutting forces. A section of tree trunk 18 to 24 inches in diameter works excellently. The weight prevents movement during operation. The flat-top surface accepts blade mounting. The natural rot resistance of many species ensures decades of service. Alternatively, heavy timber framing creates stable base from dimensional lumber. The blade mechanism varies by design tradition, but follows consistent principles. A heavy blade mounted on a hinge point rises and falls with lever action. The blade edge must be hardened steel, capable of holding sharpness through repeated impacts. Old lawnmower blades, machete blades, or leaf spring steel from vehicles provide suitable material. The blade mounts at an angle that draws material into the cutting zone during the stroke. The lever arm determines mechanical advantage and operator effort. Longer levers require less force but move through larger arcs. Shorter levers require more force but operate faster. A 3-foot lever provides good balance between effort and speed for most operators. The lever attaches to the blade through a pivot that allows smooth motion without binding. The feed mechanism guides branches into cutting position. A simple V-shaped guide formed from boards directs branches toward the blade. The guide prevents material from shifting sideways during cutting. More sophisticated designs include hold-down mechanisms that grip branches during the cutting stroke. Assembly requires basic joinery that any woodworker can accomplish. Mortise and tenon joints provide strength at stress points. Lag bolts secure blade mounting hardware. The entire construction can be completed in a weekend using hand tools exclusively. No welding, no machining, no specialized equipment. The finished tool processes branches from pencil thickness to 2 or 3 inches in diameter, depending on blade size and lever length. Output accumulates below the cutting station. The chips work immediately as mulch, compost feedstock, or animal bedding. No further processing is necessary for most applications. The economics expose why the power equipment industry maintains information suppression. A basic hand shredder built from salvaged materials costs effectively nothing. Scrap lumber from construction sites provides base and frame material. Worn lawnmower blades from repair shops provide cutting edges. Hardware store bolts and hinges cost perhaps $10 to $20 total. A determined scrounger builds functional equipment for zero cash outlay. Even purchasing all materials new keeps costs under $100. Pressure-treated lumber for rot resistance, new blade steel, quality hardware, and protective finish might total $75 to $100. This one-time investment provides equipment lasting 20 to 30 years minimum with basic maintenance. Compare this to powered equipment economics. Entry-level electric chippers start around $150 and last perhaps 5 years with regular use. They require electricity that costs money and limits operating locations. Replacement models cost the same or more as prices increase over time. Gasoline chippers start around $300 for homeowner models. They require gasoline, 2-cycle oil, spark plugs, air filters, and eventual carburetor service. Annual operating costs run $50 to $100. Replacement every 7 to 10 years adds ongoing capital costs. Lifetime expense for powered chipping easily exceeds $1,000. The hand shredder produces equivalent output for 1/10 the cost or less. The savings multiply across millions of households. Every home with trees generates branch waste. Every gardener needs mulch and compost material. The addressable market for powered chippers exists only because the free alternative remains unknown. $9 billion annually flows to an industry selling solutions to problems that hand tools solve for free. The suppression of traditional knowledge protects this revenue stream. The investment in maintaining ignorance pays returns that exceed any advertising campaign. Silence costs nothing and generates billions. The hand shredder waiting to be built represents more than yard waste processing. It represents independence from systems designed to extract continuous payment. The subscription economy extends beyond software and streaming services. Powered equipment creates subscriptions to fuel suppliers, parts manufacturers, and replacement cycles. Each machine purchased enrolls the buyer in ongoing expense that never ends until they abandon the activity entirely. Hand tools break this pattern completely. They require no fuel subscription. They need no parts supply chain. They demand no eventual replacement with newer models. They sit in the barn between uses, costing nothing. They work when needed and rest when not. This independence terrifies industries built on dependency. The business model requires repeat customers. The profit margin requires consumable supplies. The growth projection requires expanding the customer base and increasing purchase frequency. A tool that works forever and costs nothing violates every principle of modern commerce. Clayton Hughes understood this in 1934 without economic vocabulary to describe it. He knew that buying the gasoline chipper meant buying gasoline forever. He knew that depending on manufactured equipment meant depending on manufacturers. He knew that his grandfather's shredder asked nothing from corporations and gave everything a farmer needed. The extension agent who dismissed hand tools as outdated was already captured by corporate thinking. Progress meant dependency, modernity meant payments, success meant consumption. The agent could not imagine that refusing to buy might be the most progressive choice available. 90 years later, the same assumptions dominate. Advertisements still portray hand tools as primitive. Experts still recommend powered solutions. Success still means owning expensive equipment. The framing has not changed because the framing works, but the branches still pile up behind barns. The brush still needs processing. The mulch still benefits gardens. The need that hand shredders served for 300 years still exists exactly as it always existed. Only the tools have been hidden. The shredder design that Clayton Hughes rebuilt is waiting for you to build it again. The materials exist in your community right now. Scrap lumber accumulates at construction sites. Worn blades rust behind lawnmower repair shops. Hardware stores stock every bolt and hinge required. The investment is measured in hours, not dollars. The power equipment industry hoped you would never learn this simple truth. They hoped that 90 years of careful suppression had permanently erased the knowledge from public memory. They hoped that your generation would assume engines were necessary for any task requiring force. They hoped that $9 billion of annual sales would continue growing forever. They did not anticipate that information spreads differently now. Every video demonstrating hand shredder construction reaches viewers the industry cannot intercept. Every blog post sharing traditional designs bypasses extension services captured by corporate sponsors. Every community workshop teaching these skills creates builders who will never become chipper customers. Your brush pile has been waiting for a tool that costs nothing. The branches accumulating behind your garage, along your fence line, in the corner of your yard represent resources rather than waste. They become mulch that suppresses weeds. They become compost feedstock that builds soil. They become animal bedding that cycles nutrients. The transformation requires only a tool your great-grandfather would have considered ordinary. A heavy base, a hinged blade, a lever arm, a feed guide, materials you can gather this weekend, skills you can learn from a single demonstration, results that match or exceed machines costing hundreds of dollars. Clayton Hughes saved his farm with a tool the experts told him was obsolete. He processed brush that would have overwhelmed any solution he could afford. He created value from waste, using knowledge the Extension Service dismissed. He proved that progress and independence could coexist. His grandfather's shredder worked in 1890. It worked in 1934. It works today. The physics have not changed. The need has not changed. Only the marketing has changed. You can spend $400 on a machine that requires fuel, maintenance, and eventual replacement. You can spend 90 years of payments on an industry that profits from your dependency. Or you can build what your ancestors built, process what they processed, save what they saved. The hand shredder costs nothing to build and lasts essentially forever with minimal care. The choice has always been yours to make. The industry just hoped you would never know this option existed. Now you finally know what they buried. If this opens something for you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every single like and share spreads what they tried to erase. See you in the next one soon.